let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and start in a seat. You know what? I take that back. Let's start in a child's pose. We'll switch it up a little bit today. So go ahead and bring those toes together. Those knees can be as wide as you like. Okay, go ahead and send those hips back to the heels. Okay, so as we bring the knees a little bit wider, you can melt that chest between those legs. You get a little bit more stretch through the inner thighs, and maybe also a little bit more opening through that upper back. So if you've been kind of rounded forward sitting in a chair all day, that might feel good just to open up this space right here between the shoulder blades. Okay, or you feel like that you've been standing a lot, you feel like you've been really arched through the low back, and you can bring the knees together and then maybe get a little rounding through the spine. So there's no right or wrong way, and it's just whatever feels better for you as we start out this practice. But just finding that comfortable position, letting that head rest down onto a block or maybe all the way down onto the mat, closing those eyes, and just breathing in and out through the nose. Feeling that really big expansion of the lungs, of the rib cage on that inhale. And exhale will soften. And maybe softening that chest into the mat. Get a little bit more stretch through that spine. And again, big breath in, really filling those lungs. Holding that breath at the top. And then again, exhaling it out nice and slow. And just a couple more like that on your own, that really big breath in. And exhaling it out. Maybe we want those inhales to be just as long as those exhales. And if you feel like if your mind is maybe a little bit scattered right now and you're having a hard time focusing on that breath, maybe give it a count. So 8-second count on that inhale. And an 8-second count on that exhale. And now if your knees were touching, bring those legs a little bit further apart. Doesn't have to be super wide, but just a little bit wider base. And then walk those hands over to that right side. So we're gonna do a big reach through that left arm, pressing that left hip back to that left heel. And maybe you rest your head down. So again, pressing that left heel back towards that right hip, reaching through that right arm, and then breathe into that left side body. Feel a little bit more stretch on that left side. And then walk those hands back to center. We'll go to the other side. So really reaching through that right hand, pressing that right hip back towards that right heel, and soften that head down. Think about focusing that breath into that right side. And then walk those hands back to center. Go ahead and lift up onto those hands and knees. So readjust those knees so they're right underneath those hips. Hands are going to be right underneath those shoulders. Moving through those cat-cows. So on that inhale, we're just going to drop the belly, lift the chest, lift the tailbone as we look up. But exhale, we're going to round into that spine. Press the shoulder blades away. Draw that belly up and in. And inhale, drop the belly. Lift the chest, lift the tailbone as we gaze up. Exhale, round. Good. Inhale, lift and lengthen. Good. Exhale, round. Good. Now bring it back to neutral spine. We're going to send just that right leg back, flexing that foot, pointing those toes straight down. Okay, so we don't want the hips open up to the side. They square them off, so point that right pinky toe down towards the mat. I know it's a little bit hard to see my foot right now. Then we're going to reach that left arm forward, so finding that balance. And exhale, curl it in, drawing that elbow to the knee. Inhale, we'll reach it back out. But exhale, curl it in. Inhale, reach it back out. That last time, curl it in. Good, then send it back out. Now this time, if you want to bend into that back knee, okay, maybe you just keep it here. You might even start to feel that stretch through the quad right there. Okay, or you can reach in that hand back. So if you reach with the thumb down, you reach to the big toe side, just walk that foot around. So thumb is up, pinky toe side of the foot, draw that knee towards the midline, and then press and lift. So again, if this is too advanced for you, hey, maybe you're just reaching here in this position. Keeping that core nice and tight, pressing that foot into the hand, getting that lift with the foot. And slowly release it back out. Lower that hand down, lower that knee down. Going to the other side, we're gonna send that left leg back, point those toes down, square off the hips. Right arm is gonna reach forward. Good, exhale, curl it in, touching that elbow to the knee. Inhale, reach it out. Good, exhale, curl it in. Inhale, extend it out. Last time, curling that knee in. Reaching it out nice and long. Now start to bend that back knee. Okay, maybe we just reach, or maybe we can grab onto it. So again, pinky toe side of the foot, thumb is up. Draw that knee towards the midline, core tight. Press that foot into the hand as we lift. Couple more breaths. Press that foot up to the sky a little bit more. And we'll release it out and lower that hand down, lower that knee down. Couple more rounds of cat-cows, maybe adding some sways from side to side as we round and extend that spine. Okay, now bring it back to neutral. Just go ahead and step those feet back to our plank position. Okay. Abs are nice and tight, chest is pulling forward, holding it here, breathing for 5 breaths. So if you need to lower onto those knees, just into a kneeling plank, you can. We'll go for 3 more. And 2. Good, and 1. Sending those hips up and back into that downward facing dog. Maybe take a moment, pedal those feet out, sway those hips, whatever you feel like you need. Really grip those palms into the mat, pressing that belly towards the thighs, pressing that tailbone towards the ceiling, bending those knees as much as you need to as we press those heels down to the mat. 1 more breath. And then we'll inhale on the toes. Bend into those knees as you look forward, stepping those feet to the top of the mat. Inhale, slide the hands up the shins into that nice half lift, flat spine. And exhale, we'll slide those hands down as we fold. Just maybe letting the head and the arms hang nice and heavy. Good, inhale, we're gonna rise to standing. Flat back as we do so, reaching those arms up overhead. And then exhaling those hands to heart center. Good, inhale, we're gonna reach those arms back up, interlace those fingers, palms are gonna face up, gentle side stretch over to the right. Inhale it back up, and exhale it to the left. Good, inhale, reach it back up, not interlacing, releasing those fingers, draw the elbows down, lifting through that chest. Inhale it back up, exhale, pull it down. Inhale, reach it back up. Now on this last one, okay, maybe you just hold it here if those shoulders are feeling really tight, so in that field goal position. Okay, or you can start to extend those arms, interlacing those fingers. Maybe just start by drawing those shoulder blades together, a little more opening through the chest, straightening those arms out, and then maybe you find that you can bring those hands away from those hips. Couple breaths. Yeah, then we'll release those hands as we reach those arms up. And exhale, fold it forward. Inhaling that half lift. And exhale, we'll plant those hands down as we step those feet back to our plank. Good, pause it here for a breath. Nice and tight through that core. Then shift the weight forward, lower down, pointing those toes. We'll roll the shoulders down and back as we lift through the chest. So maybe finding that up dog. And if this is a little bit too aggressive, just keep the rib cage down. Just lifting that chest up off of the mat. Good. Then soften it back down, reversing that plank, hips back to the sky, down dog. Good, now inhaling on the toes, stepping those feet to the top of the mat. Inhale that half lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, we'll rise to standing. Exhale, the hands to heart center. Inhale, we'll reach the arms up, interlace those fingers, palms face up, side stretch to the right. Inhale it up. Exhale it to the left. Inhale, reach it back up. Now exhale, pull those elbows down. Hold to get here, finding that opening through the chest, or you can interlace those fingers. Open up this way. One more breath. And release those arms up. And exhale, full. Inhaling that half lift. And exhale, we'll plant those hands, stepping those feet back to our plank. Lower it down. Inhale, lift. So into that cobra, or all the way up into that upward facing dog. And exhale, sending those hips back to the heels for our down dog. Let's move through that one more time. Good, now we'll inhale on the toes, stepping those feet top of the mat. Half lift on the inhale. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise. Exhale, the hands to heart center. Inhale, reach it up. Interlace the fingers, palms up. Bend it to the right. Inhale it up and to the left. Inhale, reach it up. Releasing those hands, draw the elbows down, interlace the fingers, open up through that chest, big stretch the shoulders, and release those arms up. Exhale, fold. Half lift on the inhale. And exhale, planting those hands, stepping those feet back, lower it down. Inhale, lift. And exhaling those hips to the sky, downward facing dog. Good, now inhale on the toes. Bend those knees, stepping those feet, top of the mat. Half lift on the inhale. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise to standing. And sink those hips down on that exhale. Good, core is nice and tight. If those shoulders are really tight and you're having a hard time keeping them overhead, you can always just bring those hands to heart center. So that is totally fine. And drop those hips a little bit lower, keeping that core nice and tight. So if the arms are reaching up, we really want to try to avoid arching through that low back. It's about pulling that rib cage and that tailbone down as we sink those hips down a little bit lower. Okay, now we'll bring those hands to heart center. We're gonna rise up. Weight's gonna be in that right foot. Okay, and we'll pull that left knee up towards the chest. Knee turns out, and then we'll bring that foot to that calf. So I'll mirror you guys. So abs are tight, a little bit of balance here. So if this is too much, just go ahead and lower that toe down. So think of it as like a kickstand for a little extra balance. Okay, now if you want a little bit more challenge, you can always bring that foot up to that inner thigh. That's an option too. And then if you want to start to reach those arms up to the ceiling, you can. And next, maybe start to gaze up towards those fingertips. Just challenge that balance a little bit more. You're still feeling really steady and balanced, looking up towards those fingertips, maybe you close those eyes down. Okay, now bringing those hands back to heart center. Okay, we're gonna bring that knee forward. Okay, so it's gonna be your all's left hand is gonna reach for that foot. Draw those knees together. Okay, so bring the knees to touch. Okay, core is tight, rib cage is pulled down. Then just gently press that foot into that hand. Okay, so it brings the heel away from your hip a little bit, but you get a little bit more stretch through that front of the leg. And keep pressing. Really strong flexing through not only this right glute, but Also, this left leg is nice and strong. One more breath. Good, and release that foot down, reaching those arms up, and exhale, fold. Find that flat back on the inhale, and exhale, soften it down. Good, inhale, we're gonna rise to standing, reach it up nice and tall, sinking those hips right down into that chair. Good, sink maybe a little bit lower. Good, now we're gonna rise up. As we bring those hands to heart center, we're gonna draw that right knee up and then out. So again, maybe that little kickstand, maybe foot comes to the ankle, or maybe you grab it, bring that foot all the way up to that inner thigh. Really strong through this standing leg, strong through that core, finding that still spot to balance on. Now if you feel nice and stable, maybe we start to extend those arms up. And maybe we start to look up towards the ceiling. Maybe you close down those eyes. And then bring those hands back to heart center. We'll bring that knee forward as we reach for that foot. Now draw those knees together. Keep that core really, really tight. And then start to press that foot into the hands. Tight through. So the more we flex this glute, the more of that stretch we're going to feel through that front of the leg. At the same time, keeping our abs nice and tight. It kind of cheats if we start to arch. I'll get a much better stretch in the quad with the abs tight. It's also going to protect your back a little bit more. Just a few more breaths. And go ahead and release that foot down, reaching those arms up tall. And exhale, fold. Find that flat back on the inhale. And exhale, fold. Just let the head and the arms hang nice and heavy. If you want to grab onto opposite elbows so your arms frame your face. And maybe add a gentle sway from side to side. Now, if you're feeling any pain in your low back, you can always release. Bring your hands to your shins, give it a little bit more support. Also notice where the weight is on your feet. Sometimes if your weight is all the way in those toes, it kind of loads the spine a little bit more. So just shift the weight back so you get a little bit more activation through those glutes and through the backs of your legs. And one more breath. And now we're gonna bend into those knees as we come back up into our chair. So stick with me on this one, okay? So drop those hips down. It's gonna be a little bit of a challenge here. Okay, we're gonna keep sitting as low as we can. Good. Keep breathing through this. If at any point in time you need to lower those hands down to the mat, you can. Okay. Maybe you get to a point where you feel like those heels have to lift off, but we're gonna keep going. I'll tell you, we're gonna make it all the way down onto a seated position. Okay, so sit back, sit back, sit back. Okay, try and do it as control of a fall as you can, and then lean it back. So a little bit of core work here into that boat pose. So here, toes can be on the ground, hands can be on the knees, or one or the other. Lifting through that chest, breathing. Again, if you want more advanced, extending those legs out. Holding it here for 5, 4, 3, 2, good, and 1. Just hug those knees in. And then we'll bring those the feet together. Knees will open up wide, sit up nice and tall, and then start to fold it forward. So again, if you want to sit down on that block, gives your hips a little bit more elevation. So those knees can open up a little bit wider. I like it because I feel like I can get my back a little bit flatter and then hinge into it. So it's not so much rounding in my low back. Good, couple more breaths here. Good, then bring it back up. Okay, we're gonna come back to that boat pose. We're gonna add something to it here. So lifting those feet up, or again, you can always have those toes onto the ground, just challenging yourself wherever that may be. Now from here, we're gonna add a little twist. So we're gonna bring both hands to your right side, bring it to center, and to your left side. Okay, bring it back to center. So we're gonna go for 10, 9, keep breathing, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bring it back to center. Hold it for that breath. And then go ahead and relax it all the way down, hugging those knees in. Just gently rock from side to side. Good, now start to rock forward and back. We're gonna swing those feet around, or maybe cross the shins. Come onto those hands and knees. Sending that right leg straight back. Curl that knee into the nose, stepping that foot through. Inhale, reaching those arms up so rib cage draws down. Okay, tailbone draws down, so flatten this space out as much as you can. Okay, then from here, pressing those hips forward and down slightly, bringing that front knee to stack right over that right ankle. And maybe you reach those arms up overhead. And we'll bring those hands to heart center and then twist. So hooking that left elbow across, pressing into those palms, twisting, looking over that right shoulder. And then bring it back to center, reaching those arms back up. And then straighten that front leg, pulling those toes back again. If you want to have that block handy, just give a little elevation to those arms, help to lengthen through that spine. Again, the more we pull those toes back, those right toes back, the more of that stretch we're going to feel in the calf and in that hamstring. One more breath. Good, then rebend into that knee, sending that leg straight back. And then from here, maybe opening up that hip and then bending that top knee. And then we'll bring it back around, lower that knee down to the other side, sending that left leg back, curling that knee into the nose, stepping that foot through. Inhale, reaching those arms up overhead. Okay, so we can start with our hips stacked over that right knee. Again, pull the tailbone down, rib cage down. So flatten this lumbar spine, this low back region out. And then we'll bend into that front knee without changing this. Okay, pressing the hips forward, stacking that left ankle over that left knee. And then reach those arms out. And we'll bring those hands to heart center and then twist. So reach that right elbow forward and then twist it across, lifting through that chest. Nice flat back. Abs are tight, and then press, lift, and twist. So we don't want to be collapsing onto that left thigh. We want to keep our chest lifted. And then bring it back to center. We'll reach those arms back up. Pause it here for another breath. And then we'll straighten that front leg. Pull those toes back. So again, hands can be on the ground, or you can bring them to a block. Nice flat spine. And then start to fold it forward. So we're really pulling those left toes back. Breathing. Good, and rise up slightly as we bend into that front knee, sending that leg straight back. And then we'll open up through that hip, bending that top knee. And then straighten those hips out, straightening that leg, just lowering that knee down, bringing those toes together. Knees can come out a little bit wider, sending those hips back to the heels as we rest that head down to the mat. If the knees are a little bit wider, you want a little bit more stretch through that upper back and maybe even through those triceps. We're gonna walk those arms out as far as we can. We're gonna flip those palms that you can't see, bending those elbows, and then you're gonna pat yourself on the back. So just right in between those shoulder blades, and then soften that chest down. So with that exhale, feel like that's your sternum or your chest bone is pressing down into the mat. So you should feel that big stretch, that big opening between those shoulder blades. And then release those arms out. Go and press back up onto the hands and knees. And then we'll make our way back into that downward facing dog. So from this down dog, we'll go into that pigeon. So that right knee is gonna come to that right wrist. Foot's gonna slide across and then slide this left leg back. So again, if you have some sort of block, or even probably a book would work for this too, you can slide it right underneath this hip. So depending on how tight those hips are, you can bring it to different heights. Just prop it there. So again, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of it, and then rest your head down. Now for maybe some of you, this pose is super, super easy and you don't really feel a whole lot into it. One thing that you can do is, your flexibility is probably good there, maybe working on that strength a little bit. Okay, so what you can do, come up onto those hands. We're gonna really press this right shin into the mat, pull that shin back. Okay, so we start to feel this region start to flex a little bit. Okay, now that back knee is gonna press down and pull forward. So you can't really see me doing anything, but it's really active here. So it gets to the point where I can bring my fingers out to the side and maybe even lift up. That's how much I'm using my hips. So right shin is pulling back, left knee is pulling forward. Abs are tight. Something about same idea, pulling that tailbone down, rib cage downward on that pelvic tilt. Again, you don't have to have your hands lifted, but think of that's how engaged we want those hips to be. Now you can still keep these really tight hips and lower, not tight hips, but that strength building, the engagement through those hips as we soften it down. So that way you're not super, super relaxed into it, overstretching, but again, finding a little bit of strength. Banshee. A couple more breaths. And let's go and come back onto those hands. Step it back into that downward facing dog. And then we'll go to the other side. So bringing that left knee through, so left knee to the left wrist, foot comes across, sliding that right leg back, and then pointing those toes. So again, if this is super tight, grab onto that block, slide it underneath, and then just go ahead and rest it down. If you want to work on a little bit more stability through those hips, you can come up onto those hands, pressing into that left shin, pulling that shin back as that right knee is pulling forward. Again, think about scooping that tailbone down, keeping that core nice and tight, and then maybe you can lift those hands up off of the mat. So maybe they don't lift off, but get really light through those fingers. This side might be a little bit different. Let's stay with that breath, keeping that stability through the hips as we lower down onto those forearms. And then come back up onto those hands. Go ahead and send that foot back. So just pause for a breath or two in that down dog. If you want to pedal those feet out a little bit, let's get a little blood flow back to those legs, you can. Taking one more breath here in this down dog. And then go ahead and step those feet through. So making your way to a seat, extending those legs out, reaching those arms forward, rolling it down one vertebrae at a time. And then once you're down, reach those arms overhead. So that full body stretch from the fingertips all the way down through those toes. And then we'll hug just that right knee into the chest. Give it a nice little squeeze, maybe even pulling that knee all the way out towards that right shoulder. So a little bit of opening through the hips, the inner thigh. And now we can twist that knee across the body. So that left hand's gonna grab it, guiding it across, keeping that right shoulder down, maybe even extending that arm out as we twist, taking that big breath in, holding that twist right where it's at, and then exhale. Maybe you find a little bit more rotation. And bring that knee back to center. It will switch sides. So hug that left knee in, that right leg will just extend out nice and long. You can draw that left knee out towards that shoulder. And then we'll twist that knee across the body. So right hand will guide it across as we keep reaching that left arm out, keeping that shoulder down, and soften, relax into it on that exhale. And then bring that knee back to center. Go ahead and hug both knees into the chest. You give it a little rock or maybe some Draw some circles with those knees. Now finding that stillness. We'll round that spine, bringing the forehead to the knees. And we'll extend those legs out, reaching those arms overhead, that full body stretch from the fingertips all the way down through those toes. Big breath in, reach. And exhale those arms down by the sides. Palms will face up. Those shoulder blades will walk together. You can bring those legs out a little bit wider. And just completely relaxing here for a few breaths. Just being in this calm, quiet, relaxed space. Begin to deepen your breath. Just gently begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes. And reaching those arms overhead, full body stretch from the fingertips, reaching all the way down through those tippy toes. And hugging those knees into the chest as we roll it over to that right side. So letting that right arm support the head. Left arm just falls in front, completely resting on your side. And then press yourself up into that comfortable seat, sitting tall. The eyes remain closed. Just pausing for a couple breaths. And then inhale those arms up overhead. Palms will meet as we exhale those hands to heart center, bowing your heads. Thank you guys so much for joining me this evening. I will see you tomorrow at 7:30 or 7.